I mean, the places we actually play, we don't really have that much control over as a group. There's certain places we prefer to play, certain places we refuse to play, and Ireland has always been a place that we'd wanted to play, but for one reason or another, it never happened. I don't know. I mean, it's like in America. We every time we go to America, we want to tour, play New Orleans. And that's one place we've always wanted to play, and we've toured there many times, and for one reason or another, we can never get. It never happens, and I guess it's sort of the same thing with Ireland.
I would have imagined that with some of the sort of influences that sort of have informed, if you like, the last few albums, you would have played places like New Orleans all the time, no?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think well, with a place like New Orleans, they have their own music there, and they're not really that concerned with or as concerned as other places with new music coming into that town.
Okay, well, what have you been up to in the last couple of years, since The Good Son in 1990 and Henry's Dream now?
Well, I don't know, I've been elbow deep in baby shit, actually.
Oh, yeah?
I have a 11-month-old child, so I did that this year.
And what was that like?
What do you mean?
I mean, did you enjoy the last 11 months?
Oh, immensely, yeah. I have a kid, it's incredible.
And where are you living these days?
São Paulo, Brazil.
So you're still living in Brazil. You're going to move to America, I believe.
No, there was some talk about it, but I visited there recently. I mean, I used to find America a very mysterious, very romantic sort of place. Now I find it a hellhole, a disgusting, cruel, mean-spirited place, and I refuse to live there. The more I see of America, the more I see of America on the television, the more I read about America, the more I find it intolerable. So, I don't know. I don't really know where we're going to live, actually.
But you are going to move?
We're going to leave Brazil. Yeah, I want to live in an English-speaking country.
What about, you lived in Berlin for a good while. Was that good, or did you just get sick of it at the end?
Well, I mean, Berlin to me was my second youth. You know, it was one of the most incredible periods of my life. I mean, literally, I lived there for about three years, and I would have, I guess, slept perhaps 2 days of the week, and the rest of the time was working, writing, going to clubs, meeting women, meeting really very intelligent, very interesting contemporary artists. I mean, Berlin's just like this continuous party in a way, and it's incredible.
Okay, if that was the second childhood, then what was the first childhood? Can we go back before Boys Next Door, say 76 direction? When you grew up in Australia, what kind of music were you listening to?
Well, I mean, I listened to the worst shit you could imagine. When I was a school kid, I was very much dominated by my brother's taste, who was a hippie, and so I mean, the records I listened to were unbelievable, like Moody Blues, Pink Floyd, Jethro Tull, Procol Harum, the worst.
Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Yeah.
Tarkus. Yeah.
Tarkus. So if you come up to 19...
So basically, the way the story goes is that I listened to that. Then I went into a record shop one day and I saw this record, Raw Power, by the Stooges, and saw the guy on the front of the cover. I knew nothing about it and thought, fuck, this is amazing looking cover, and went and bought it and played that, and threw out all the shit that my brother had been imposing on me for so many years, and it literally changed my life, I think, that record.
And did that make you form that band that I mentioned, Boys Next Door, that kind of music?
We had a band. I mean, I've been working with Mick Harvey, my guitarist, since I was 14 or something like that. We've been working together for God knows how long. And the birthday party band was basically a band the Boys Next Door was basically a band that played cover versions, like Alex Harvey Band, for example, who was a great hero of mine at that time. Alice Cooper, the usual.
Mm. So when you formed the birthday party, was there any sort of a bit more like, because if you didn't think Boys Next Door was necessarily that great a band, you thought, right, the birthday party is something I particularly want to do, something a bit different, something a bit sort of darker or whatever, and that like this sort of was able to be brought to London and therefore the English people picked up on it quicker?
Well, I mean, I really had no interest in music at all. Anyway, I mean, when I was in the birthday party, the music side of it, even though I enjoyed it, was it wasn't the main kind of purpose of being in the group. The main purpose of being in the birthday party, I think, for probably all of the members of the group, was the fact that it gave us a ticket to get out of Australia. And we had a guy say, "Listen, stay in the group, and we'll send you to London." And to us in those days, being Australian, reading the NME and all that sort of stuff, London seemed like this incredible kind of amazing, creative place. Swinging London and all that sort of stuff. And when we got there, we found it basically swinging from its neck in a way. I mean, London was one of the greatest disappointments of my life. And, we stuck around there for a few years, lived in the most abject poverty, had no friends there, had no money, worked shitty jobs. But this was all very, very necessary for the way the birthday party ended up being. Birthday party was as far as I'm concerned, it was a statement of utter rage and contempt towards London, and that was the kind of guts of our music. That's why we were just so angry about it, in fact.
So that means it did have its good side. I mean, there was a creative impetus.
Absolutely.
Because of it. Okay, well then, if the birthday party then broke up around 83 direction, what idea did you have after that? What did you want to do? I mean, what was the difference to you between having a Bad Seeds, in other words, the band you have now, as opposed to the birthday party?
Well, I mean, I was going through a pretty vague period around that time. I didn't really know what was going on, in a way. The birthday party broke up, and I was kind of left in Australia with nothing to do, really. And Mick Harvey, who is able to stand outside of things and look at things in a much clearer way than I am, said to me, "Look, make another group, I'll be in it, and I'll get we can get these musicians and stuff, and we'll make another group and play different sort of music, because the music that the birthday party was playing was strangling us. It was destroying us, simply because of the way the audience were reacting towards it."
Well, the audience and the press reacted towards it in a certain way that put you into some sort of a pigeonhole that loads of bands later sort of followed. Did you find you didn't just want to be in that this whole sort of dark goth whatever, and I'm just getting sick of the fact that you didn't give birth to anything? You merely had a band called the Birthday Party, then you had a band called the Bad Seeds.
Well, it is like that. I mean, it's not a nice feeling. Excuse me. I mean, it's not a nice feeling to honestly try to create something in an honest way and find that you've given birth to 20 of the worst bands that probably ever have existed. It's not a good feeling. I mean, you start to doubt yourself in a way. You start to doubt what people actually see in your music. I know what my music's about, but maybe people see it in a completely different way, and that's frightening to me. It's always very, very frightening for me to feel that I'm being misinterpreted, if you know what I mean.
So if you were to read an interview, say, with the Sisters of Mercy or with the Cult or with the Mission or any of these bands, and you saw your own name being mentioned within that article, do you say, no, wait a minute, these guys just have this wrong, there's nothing to do with me? I mean, you're more in touch with a million other people I could mention.
Well, I mean, I think you've mentioned three of my worst, liked bands. I mean, The Mission.
Well, when you released the album of cover versions, Kicking Against the Pricks, you had stuff from Johnny Cash and Glenn Campbell and The Seekers and Gene Pitney and The Velvets, etc. on that. Was that in any way...
Which wasn't really very goth, let's face it.
No, it certainly wasn't, but is that the very reason why, one of the reasons why you delved back into the past to prove that you're more than just that, or just one of the reasons it was a reaction against it? I mean, the title of the album might say something.
I mean, the title... we put out a record before that called... what's it called? The Firstborn is Dead.
Oh, yeah.
And that wasn't received as well as the From Her to Eternity, the record before that. And I was bitter about that. I was angry, very angry and very upset about that. And I guess that's where the name Kicking Against the Pricks, why it's called that, because we were kicking against the pricks, and the pricks were the journalists as far as we were concerned, or the people. Yeah, well, anyway. But the actual process of making the record was very, very simple in that we just said, okay, let's make a cover versions record, and I said, okay, I'm going to write down 20 of my favourite songs without any consideration as to whether I could sing them, the band could play them, whether they were too complex or whatever, and we will try and play these songs, and that's what we did. It was actually originally intended to be a double album, but I mean, there were a lot of tracks that never got put on that record. Really great stuff as well.
Well, you just said that you weren't interested really in music, or weren't interested in having a band at one stage at all. So were you interested in writing years and years ago, or did it?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in doing that.
Well, you did that eventually in the 80s. You spent 5 years on a book which eventually came out and became a bestseller.
Yeah.
Now, that book was extremely well received. So what about Nick Cave as a novelist, or as a journalist, or as a writer?
Well, I mean, I know I can write. I know that, I mean, I doubt a lot of things about myself, but I know that I can write. And I know that I can write well. And I hope that I will continue to write and continue to write novels. I mean, I do have an idea in my head for a new novel, but it's different. You write, when you write your first book, you don't even know how to write a book. You go in there and you sign some contract that says let's write a book, and you have no idea how to write a book. And the whole thing is, you never even feel it's ever going to get published. So it's a completely indulgent thing in a way. And for me to write And the Ass Saw the Angel was an utterly obsessive thing for me. It took over my entire life. I had no social contacts. It just all poured out, and it was very easy in that way. It just kept coming out and so on. To write a second book is a much, much more frightening, daunting thing to do in a way. I know what's involved now. I know what I'm going to have to go through to write another book, and which I will do, but it's very difficult to decide, okay, today I'm going to sit down there, you sit at your typewriter and start to write it.
Well, the book And the Ass Saw the Angel sold about 17,000 hardback. It was the biggest selling book in Britain at the time when it was released, which was just a few years ago, and it was also extremely well received. Does it matter to you whether it's well received or not, or were you particularly pleased that the book really was well received?
I was very pleased that it was well received. I mean, I took a perverse pleasure from it in a way, I mean, like I'm a rock musician, which everyone knows is at the very bottom of the kind of creative pyramid. Rock musicians are the lowest of the low. We all know that. And the people who are at the top of the pyramid are the novelists. That's generally kind of accepted. and it's almost forbidden, or it's just not kosher for a rock musician to try and write a serious novel. And I did that, and I had an immense satisfaction in being able to do that, to show that, listen, I do make music, but making music doesn't mean that you have to be a fucking moron, and that you can...
You're speaking from experience, obviously, that you must have come across a lot of closed doors, simply because, wait a minute, now, you simply can't do this. Like, if you had come from nowhere to be a novelist, those doors would have been opened. But because you had come from being a rock musician, therefore the lowest of the low,
absolutely,
those doors were all shut.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you know, I mean, it was kind of interesting in a way, or it's interesting for me, I don't know if it's interesting for anybody else, but the literary critics loved the book and wrote incredible reviews about that, said, you know, that it's the best book, you know, book of the year and all this sort of shit. The music journalists, they had to like it. The book's great. They had to like it. They couldn't say it's crap. But there was this very, very kind of backhanded, begrudging kind of, you know, compliments towards the book. And it's also transparent. They are bitter. They're bitter people. They're journalists. Journalists are people who want to write books, but can't get it together, so they're journalists. And it must be immensely irritating for them, for a rock singer who's even lower than a journalist, as far as they're concerned, should write a novel and be successful.
Can we balance it up there and say that the fact that you were a rock musician can be, I just said bad in terms of writing a book, but it can also be good as well. I mean, it must have also opened other doors that mightn't have been open to your regular Joe Bloggs.
What? What do you mean? Because I wrote the book?
No, because you were Nick Cave. And you were not just Joe Bloggs. I mean, you were successful in one art form, if you like, or in one pigeonhole, let's say.
Well, I mean, let's not blow this out of proportion. I'm mildly successful. I'm not, you know, a hugely successful person, but I'm a good writer, and I think that I'm probably a better book writer even than I am a songwriter in a way. You know, so...
Okay, well look, I can't play the book on the radio, but I can play a song, and I'm going to play one directly after this from the 1990 album, The Good Son. Away tomorrow, Dublin on Saturday. The new album, do you think it's different then vocally in particular, first of all, let's just say? Because you were just saying there that you think it's more sort of up front or out there or in your face.
Well, no, I think that most of my former records, there's a kind of, I don't know, I listen to them now, I was just listening to the Ship Song then. There's a kind of introverted sound to it, as if I'm singing to myself in a way. And on Henry's Dream, it's I feel the vocals, the vocals seem to leap off the disc and bite you on the face or something. They're much more directed at people rather than you know, just inward looking, if you know what I mean.
Well, besides the covers album, if I could say that The Good Son is probably your most commercial, would you first of all agree with that?
Well, I mean, I don't really understand what you mean by commercial in a way. I mean, whether you mean that we made it so that we would sell more records, or that it's just more palatable.
Just that it's more palatable. It just happens to be.
Well, I mean, I think it really depends on who's listening to it. I think The Good Son probably lost a lot of fans that who used to like the Bad Seeds.
Do you think so?
Well, I don't know.
I think they could.
I have a feeling some of them thought, oh look, what's this shit? You know, what happened to their? You know, they used to play hard music and now they're playing the schmaltz. But I mean, The Good Son was one particular record that I wanted to make, and I wanted to make for years. Was a very romantic, very sad, melancholy record, and that's what we did, and that was one record that we made. Now we continue, and the next and Henry's Dream is a far more aggressive, violent record generally.
What about just one thing, like as regards music and the book? Oh yeah, just one last question on the book, which is, who do you think bought the book? I mean, do you think it was Nick Cave fans?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. And is there going to be a second one? I mean, you say you have one in your head. There will be at some stage.
I have a story in my head that's is so great. I have to say that here and now. And it's really a matter of me sitting down and writing this story. I mean, the sort of novels that I want to write are novels in very much the classic conventional sense of a strong plot, climaxes and all that sort of stuff in the most, the way they teach you how to write a book in, English expression at school or whatever. And and I have a story like that, which is great. But as I say, it's a very difficult thing to do, to sit down and actually start it. Look at a blank page and start it.
Well, let's get to that third one, which is celluloid or video or movies or whatever. With the video of Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds on tour, which is called The Road to God Knows Where, it was I presume it was an extremely honest video. I mean, it was quite sort of slow and tedious. There was, it was sad in places. It was tough enough.
Well, I mean, first of all, we didn't make that film. We were the subject of that film. It was made by a German director and a friend of ours, and he asked, could he come and film us on tour? So we didn't develop any concept with him before he made it. He basically just went on tour with us and filmed us as he saw us. And I think it's an incredibly accurate portrayal of at least how the Bad Seeds are on tour, and I'm sure how many other groups are on tour. It is a very you do have to wade through so much shit just to get up on stage and play your hour and a half of glory, of power. The rest of the day it's spent doing the most mundane, irritating things.
Well, because Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds are better received, if that's the right phrase, in Britain than they are, say, probably in America, the trouble with having to deal with managers of venues and just sort of getting a bad PA system or not getting a proper sound check and all these sort of things, do you not think that at this stage of your career that you should have let all that pass you by? That should have been maybe birthday party days, certainly not later to the Bad Seeds days.
Those things haven't changed at all, I mean, the Bad Seeds would have to be probably the most disorganized band in the world. I don't know, perhaps is there a problem?
No, it's okay, go on.
I can't imagine anyone that's more disorganized, and it's always that way. The band, apart from the fact that the band everybody lives in a completely different country from each other. We hardly ever see each other. We see each other when we tour, when we make records, and our tours are chaos in a way, and they're very. I mean, the Road to God Knows Where was a particular tour that was had a particular atmosphere to it through personal reasons amongst some of the members of the group. It had a very depressing feel to it. It's not always like that, but I love that film. I think it really does portray the way it is, on the road.
Well, you had a depressing enough time as well throughout the 80s, or certainly towards, say, the middle and a bit later. When you got treatment in 1988 for heroin addiction, is that the past? Is that the 80s gone now? This is the new Nick Cave in the 90s in some ways.
I'm sorry. What do you mean?
I mean, like, for instance, that you've got all that past behind you, that part of the past.
You mean, do I take heroin?
No, I don't mean do you take heroin. I mean, like, is that part just gone now, and is that...
Well, I mean... I don't feel comfortable actually talking about this sort of thing, particularly because I feel that it's a part of my life that happened and that I went through, and that is for some bizarre reason become kind of public domain You know, I mean, I sit here and on the radio, you know, I don't know how many, 1 million people listening to me, and you start talking to me about heroin addiction, and you know, and
Well, I'm going through the whole life of Nick Cave.
I find that kind of offensive in a way, that my personal problems like that are you know, public knowledge.
Yeah.
But having said that, after coming out of the clinic that I went into, where I was promised that my life would change dramatically, that I would you know, see life in a completely different way, I would be a happy person, I would be a contented person now that, you know, I've stopped taking drugs. As far as I'm concerned, that was a lie and bullshit, and my life has not changed in any other conceivable way, except that I don't take heroin anymore, you know.
But you're also a very busy man. I mean, you've got involved in a lot of things recently as well. For instance, you mentioned the German film director. There's another one as well, Wim Wenders. You've been involved with him on various levels. First of all, Wings of Desire. Just tell me about your involvement with that.
Well, I mean, we were living in Berlin. Wim spends a lot of time in Berlin, so we see each other a lot. We'd meet in clubs and stuff like that. And he's a huge fan of our group. I mean, he's just a huge music lover. He just loves music, and he loves the Bad Seeds, and I guess it just seemed logical to him to incorporate us in his film. I mean, I think, I don't know if you've seen the film.
I have, yeah.
I mean, it was a very, very risky thing for him to do, to make a film so delicate and so fragile in a way, in the way it's filmed, and at the same time to put in a band like us as in the finale of the film, playing a live concert. It was a very, I think, very risky, dangerous idea to pursue. But Wim Wenders is an incredibly talented director, and and managed to pull that off, and that really is to his credit, I think.
What about Nick Cave as an actor? I mean, in The Road to God Knows Where, the screen test for the movie First Power, I actually saw the movie First Power with Lou Diamond Phillips. I didn't see you in it, Nick. You didn't make it to the end, or did you really want to in the first place?
I mean, you know, I can get down on my knees and thank God that I wasn't involved in that film. You've seen it, right?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, apart from the fact that Lou Diamond Phillips can't act, he just can't act. It's unbelievable that he's actually, I don't know how he's even allowed to be in films. But in this film, it's so blatantly obvious that he can't act. But the whole film is such a, you know, such a dog of a film. I was very, very happy that I didn't, you know. I mean, basically, it was my first Hollywood offer. So, I mean, actually, in the film, that isn't the audition that you see in the film.
Oh no?
No, that's an interview on TV. The audition was even more bizarre in a way. I had to go into a room with the producer, the director, and the casting agent or something like that. These sort of three fat, bearded Hollywood
mogul types
people, yeah. And they came in and said, listen, we've got a really gritty film here. We've got a real film. It may be strange, but it's real. Now, be angry. I was saying, what do you want me to do? Be angry? And they're saying, come on, be evil. And I'm saying, look, okay, fine, thank you very much, and left the room. So I never got the part. Anyway, I wasn't evil enough, or...
Do you find film scripts are making their way towards you these days? And if so, what do they see Nick Cave as being if they send you a script and say, you be number 4 here, or you be the bad person?
Well, I'm always the bad person. I get hundreds of film scripts, and I'm you know, the bad person with monotonous regularity. But I mean, I don't feel like an act, actually. I don't think I'm an actor anyway. I think I can do small cameo roles and get away with it, but I don't take acting seriously at all. I mean, I just don't. I think if you're going to be a great actor, you've got to put your whole life into it, and I don't have the time for it or the interest, really.
Well, the new album, Henry's Dream, Mick Harvey, has he got a lot to do with the arrangements on this album? And if so, congratulate him for them, because they're very good, or are they yours?
Depends what you're talking about.
Well, like just the way the songs are structured, the way they're put together, the way, like, I mean, even if you say that you're more out in this one in terms of more up front, or it would seem like that maybe that might have been because Mick Harvey's been with you so long that he's got something to do with the musical.
Mick is incredibly important in the Bad Seeds. And I mean, on this particular record, he composed all the strings that are on it. You know, he sat in a room and did that by himself. Usually we do that together, but we had a time problem. But as to the actual arrangements of the songs, I mean, that's very much a group thing. It's as much me as it is him, I would say. But having said that, I don't feel I wouldn't feel confident at the moment making a record unless I had Mick Harvey with me. I mean, it's just been going for so long, and that I would feel like a fish out of water if he wasn't involved in such a project.
Well, the production of the album, David Briggs of Neil Young and others fame was involved in it, but you took that album home with you back to Australia. You didn't like the end result and you changed it, or did you have David Briggs for the change?
No. I mean, the Mute Records have been begging us on their hands and knees for every album we've made since we've been on Mute to please use a producer. I think they feel that we're writing classic songs that are as great as any songs ever written, but we fuck them up because we don't produce them in a commercial way. And so with this record, eventually we said, okay, we will use a producer. We're not going to be stubborn about it. We will use a producer. And I looked through my record collection and tried to find the most unproducer-like producer that we could find, which seemed to be David Briggs, because he does Neil Young stuff, and Neil Young stuff, there doesn't seem to be any production on his work. And in the end, I guess all our worst fears of what a producer what may happen with a producer happened. I mean, he did take over the recording. He was a loud, arrogant American. Americans, I don't know, they speak all the time. I don't know if you ever noticed that, but they never shut up. And this happened in the studio. It was like you go into the studio and you do a vocal and you knew in your heart it was all right. There's nothing great about it. And you walk in there and it'd be like, hey, fuck, man, oh, wow, God, man. Of empty compliments. And in the end, we basically put our hands up in the air and said, look, you mix it, because, I would say, David, don't you think perhaps we could have a little more bass in this song? And he'd go, whoa, son, now, yeah, well, you got good ears there. Let's think about that. Come on, let's think. And you go on with all this bullshit for hours and hours. Well, all he has to do is turn a fucking knob, right? And in the end, we just said, all right, David, you mix it. And he mixed it, and then we took it back to Australia, listened to it. In my opinion, it was a fucking atrocity. It was the most frightening experience of my life. Hearing this, I just thought we'd made a complete dud record. And we went and remixed it, just me and Mick and Tony Cohen, who worked on birthday party stuff and so on, and basically turned it into the minor masterpiece that it is to this. That it is today.
All right, well, let's hear a track from it then. This is the current single from the album Henry's Dream, and this is called Straight to You. Straight to You is the title. Henry's Dream is the album. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Leisureland and Galway tomorrow. They're playing the SFX on Saturday. We'll be back with Nick after the news. Papa Won't Leave You, Henry is the title. It's the opening track on Henry's Dream, the new album from Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. And as I said earlier, Leisureland in Galway tomorrow. It's the SFX Dublin on Saturday, the first Irish visit. And just speaking of what we started with there earlier on, Nick, Brazil, is there something, like, why when you left Berlin, why did you pick Brazil?
Well, I mean, basically we did a tour there, and which I'd been trying to organise for a long time. I'd been trying to get the group to play in Brazil. I'd had some kind of obsession with Brazil for various reasons. And basically, we got off the plane there, and the airport doors opened, and I walked out into this sort of thick, heavy, humid air there, and just decided I would stay there, and the rest of the group went back to wherever they went, and I said I'm just going to stay here. I don't know. I mean, it's just the most incredible place I've ever seen or ever been in. In
what way? Like, I mean, is it sort of cultured and sophisticated, or is it sort of?
Well, I live in São Paulo, which is quite an informed city in third world terms. They make the press there makes a big effort to keep people informed. So in fact, when the Bad Seeds did their two concerts in São Paulo, we got, I don't know, about 5,000 for these shows, which was startling to us because we didn't think anyone knew us at all there. But I mean, what I like about Brazil are the people there. The people are intelligent, physical, kind of very free sort of people, and they drink a lot, and I mean, they're living under a political, economic nightmare over there. I mean, it's unbelievable what they're actually having to, the conditions they're having to live in. But at the same time, they manage to rise above that, and they're just incredible, vital people.
Do you think in some ways that it's so cut off that while anonymity is a good thing for a while, that actually might be a double-edged thing? It might sort of cut you off in the wrong way, that for some sort of places that you might be able to get some, I don't know, sort of creative juices flowing or something, or was it the other way around? That was a good question, wasn't it? Hold on, start that again. I mean, was it a good place or a bad place?
Lost in grammar.
Lost in grammar, indeed. Well, I have, like, in terms of being anonymous, which I'm sure it was for you there, in many ways, even
that I am anonymous there.
That you could, like, lose yourself in anonymity, let's say.
Well, I mean, it was to a large extent a kind of disappearing act on my behalf. I was sick of I'd actually been living in London after Berlin, and I mean, you live in the same city as your record company, and all you end up doing is fucking interviews and meetings with marketing people and so forth, which bores, it just bores me. So I left for Brazil, and in that way it was great. I'm not sort of dogged by that kind of thing anymore. But at the same time, I wake up in the morning in Brazil and think, what the fuck am I doing here, really? I mean, I'm in this place, nothing happens. I don't do any work there at all. And everything else is going on everywhere else in the world. And so in that way, I kind of panic about it at times as well, but then, go and have a few beers, and it all seems the right decision in the end.
What does having a child actually mean besides a good time for the last 11 months in terms of just enjoying life? Is it the thinking for two as opposed to the thinking for one for the previous sort of however many years of your life?
Do you have children?
No.
I mean, I've been a very much a free agent for 13, 14 years, ever since I left Australia. I could do whatever I like. I could go to Brazil and just say, I'm going to just stay here. I had the luxury of being able to do that. Now things have changed, really. I mean, I have to take on this role of a protector of some sort, or I have to make some decisions as to where my son is going to live, and that's quite frightening. You know, do I want him to be an American kid, or or an English kid, or you know? I mean, that's quite a decision to make, which I've never had to make those sort of decisions before.
What about all the things we've mentioned there, like in terms of, say, movie stuff, or in terms of novelist or rock person or whatever? You never look upon any of this at any stage as career as such. Like, nothing you've ever done has been specifically designed to be a step up, like a lot of people would sort of do. You just sort of get involved in something, and be it a sideways thing, be it something that's an extracurricular activity, you just go for it. Is that just the way you'll always do it?
It is, yeah. Actually, I mean, as a person, I'm incredibly unambitious. You know, I don't have this drive. I don't have this drive where I get in the studio and I want to make a record, and and I'm making that for a purpose, that it's the next step up, and we're going to sell more records with this one. I don't operate that way. I don't have that kind of ambition. In fact, I'm quite happy to remain at the level that I am now. You know, for as long as I can continue to make good records. You know, so it is like that. And I guess because I'm not a massive superstar or whatever, I do have a certain amount of freedom to try other things, I guess.
Well, as you say, you're not a massive superstar. You haven't necessarily sold billions of albums or anything like that, but you've made plenty of money. I mean, you're happy with the way that part of it's gone. I make
enough money, yeah.
What about it now, signing to Elektra Records, or is that true? I didn't know.
Yeah, it is.
So is that better? What, just for distribution, just to get the thing heard, as opposed to Mute being that bit smaller?
I mean, it's going to be better in terms that just because we're with Elektra, they're going to sell. You know, they will automatically sell 2 or 3 times as many records as we have, simply because they stick the record in every shop window, and you know, people look at the cover and go, oh, this must be the, you know, and buy the thing. But at the same time, being on Elektra, suddenly we're being kind of embroiled in this sort of record company bullshit, which being on Mute Records in England, it was never like that. With Mute, you make your record, you design the cover, you hand it to them, and that's it. They put it out, and there's no arguments about it. But Elektra now, it's the American thing, you know. Every kind of possible aspect has to be thought out, and there has to be 6 meetings about it, and you know, that's one of the reasons I don't want to live in America, because I don't want to end up being at the Elektra offices every day.
One of the other things that you did recently was the I'm Your Fan album, where loads of current bands gave a song of Leonard Cohen to a celebration of Leonard Cohen's music, if that's the right phrase. First of all, you did Tower of Song, and it was short enough, I think. I believe it was a hell of a lot longer in its original format.
Yeah, it was I think 80 minutes long. An hour and 20 minutes. Long version of it. I mean, to by way of explanation, we were in the demo studio working on new songs for the record, and we kind of ran out of ideas, and we'd refused to be on the Leonard Cohen tribute album because we thought it was such a stupid idea in a way. For various reasons. But then we went to the pub, and we drank for a while, and then kind of rolled back into the studio and just started to play this song, and we played it for an hour and a half non-stop, going through every single possible form of, you know, doing jazz verses and country and western verses and blues verses and Manchester sound verses and so on. And then we just edited together and made it into, I don't know, whatever it is, 6 minutes long now.
And what do you think of the rest of the album?
I think it's shit.
That bad, yeah?
I think it's interesting because it shows how little people understand Leonard Cohen, and I feel some affinity with that. Because it's so humorless, this record. Everyone's done these kind of reverent versions of his songs, which in my opinion, Leonard Cohen's songs are often very, very funny songs, and that seems to be continuously overlooked. And I feel that happens with my music as well. So I understand that in a way. And predictably, what happened on that record was that most of the artists, at least, did these reverent, po-faced versions of his songs, and it's a horrible record. I mean, it is.
Okay, well then, getting back to the wonderful thing that it is now, as you call it, the current album, I'm going to play another track from that, but just before I do, finally, I just want to ask this, which is another thing you got involved in was to get back to Wim Wenders again, was Until the End of the World, I Love You Till the End of the World. You gave him that track specifically for that movie?
Yeah.
And that, is it used? We haven't seen it over here yet. Is it used in the soundtrack?
Yeah, it's used in the film. I haven't seen it either, actually. I haven't had the opportunity. Yeah, it's used as part of the soundtrack.
Okay, well, Nick Cave, thanks very much for dropping in to see us. As I say, once again, Leisureland and Galway tomorrow, first time in Ireland, and then tomorrow on Saturday you play in Dublin at the SFX. So thank you very much indeed, Nick. I'm going to play the one on I'll Love You Till the End of the World, and then go straight into another track from the Henry's Dream album. Take it easy, Nick. Thanks.
Yeah.